There were a ton of PlayStation games this year, and some of them were more worth your time than others. That's why gameranx went ahead and put together this list of the stuff that's probably most worth your time. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, the 25 best PS4 and PS5 games of 2022. Starting off with number 25, it's Steelrising, a very unique Souls-like with a look that you're not going to forget anytime soon. Now, not only is this game really fun, but it's also probably the Souls-like with the most comprehensive story out there. Like, you can tell what's going on. They tell it in a very straightforward way, and sometimes smaller aspects of the game visually aren't completely up to par. And also, in terms of the French Revolution, it probably would have been a lot of fun to see it advance a little bit further. Like, it takes place close to the beginning of it. But all in all, those gripes are kind of small. Steelrising, fantastic. It's exclusive to the PS5 and definitely worth the play. And number 24 is Cult of the Lamb, a roguelike in which you are a lamb and you are starting a cult. It's a roguelike. It's got this sort of cutesy aesthetic despite being actually fairly dark. This is a really interesting game that somehow manages to combine elements of Animal Crossing into a roguelike, where you go dungeon crawling to find new cult members, bring them back, indoctrinate them, and so on and so forth. It's one of those really replayable games that really manages to hit a totally unique stride very quickly. Cult of the Lamb is available on both PS5 and PS4. And number 23 is Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord. Takes place 210 years before Warband, which is itself an expansion to the original Mount & Blade. We've talked a lot about this game because it was actually in Steam Early Access for quite a while. In a lot of ways, it retained all of the best elements of Mount & Blade and Warband, but updated the graphics a lot because, frankly, those older games really show their age. That's not to say this is the best looking game of all time. It just looks a lot better, and it's incredibly fun. I don't know if you've ever played Mount & Blade. It's kind of a hybrid of an action RPG and a strategy game. Has some sandbox elements and really, really fun combat. Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord can be found on both PS4 and 5. And number 22 is Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, which is a sort of new take on the Lego Star Wars formula. I say sort of new because it's not a total revamp. Like, you're going to be at home if you've played a Lego Star Wars and enjoy it. But it takes every one of the 9 mainline movies and Legoifies it, gives it a lot of humor, and I always rib it because it had to include The Rise of Skywalker, which is The Rise of Skywalker. But again, it's a worthwhile experience because it makes it all fun and funny in a way that the Lego Star Wars games always have. Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga is on both PlayStation 4 and 5. And number 21 is Stray, a third-person adventure game where you play as a cat. That's enough to get a lot of people in the door. But the world of Stray is incredible, detailed, beautiful, strange, melancholy, and you get to go around and knock stuff over like a cat in it. Honestly, it sounds like a simulation game, but it's actually more of a narrative. If you've never played it, it's one of those games that really shines at its smallest moments, weirdly enough. But the big stuff is also really satisfying as well. Stray is really a fantastic game, to be completely clear. You can find it on both PlayStation 4 and 5, and if you can, I would play it. And number 20 is Sniper Elite 5. Sniper Elite, obviously widely regarded as pretty much the best sniping series. It's probably the longest running one, and it has good reason for that. Its mechanics are fantastic. The slow motion deaths in it are really satisfying and also kind of Mortal Kombat-like. And Sniper Elite 5 really just sort of makes everything better. Like, there's nothing completely new in the game, but it's got the same really detailed level design, weapon customization, and just really enjoyable gameplay loop. Like, seriously, if you're seeing this footage, Sniper Elite 5 is a game that a certain type of person is absolutely going to love the hell out of, and that type of person is not going to be disappointed by it. It's really a good game. Sniper Elite 5 is available on PS4 and 5. Check it out if you have not. And number 19 is Thymesia, which was kind of a game that maybe got a little bit harsher criticism than it deserved. I'm not going to say that this is a perfect game, but it really is a compelling take on the Souls-like formula, with a spin on the combat that really introduces something enjoyable and new, which is that there's a health bar and a wounds bar, and you have to alternate between types of attack in order to actually kill an enemy. Otherwise, they will eventually just heal. That white bar will come right back because you didn't take the green bar down. And it forces you to vary your attacks in a certain way that you have to strategize, and it makes the combat experience more satisfying. This is the easy highlight of the game and is pretty much the selling point. If that sounds like a good spin on Souls-likes, Thymesia is for you. Again, there's a couple of points in it that are a little weak. Some of the visuals are samey. The story we've heard a million times at this point, but it doesn't matter. It's a hell of a lot of fun. And in terms of the PlayStations, it's exclusively on the 5. And number 18 is MultiVersus, which is a crossover brawler along the lines of a Super Smash Bros. With a very large number of different types of franchises involved. Like there's Batman, there's Scooby-Doo, there's Tom and Jerry, Steven Universe. It's pretty wild. And in truth, it's a really fun game on its own, but the fact that it's also a free-to-play manages to actually be enjoyable, and not a lot to complain about. I mean, there is the free-to-play monetization crap, but who cares? I don't pay a lot of attention to it, if I'm completely honest. MultiVersus is out on both PS4 and 5. It is definitely something for you to try out if you like a good Smash session. And number 17 is The Quarry, which comes to us by way of Supermassive Games, the creators of not only Until Dawn, but the Dark Pictures anthology. This is a game that does follow along the lines of Until Dawn a little bit more than the Dark Pictures anthology. It has that kind of gameplay, but also trends closer to sort of Friday the 13th and The Thing rather than some form of zombie story. And it does it really well. If you enjoy Until Dawn and the narrative style of Supermassive Games, this is definitely a great entry to that because it's a little different, you know? I do love Dark Pictures Anthology, but after a while, a lot of them start looking similar, and this one's got a very different look and a different story, and it's always good to change things up from time to time. It's also available on PS4 and 5. And number 16 is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R. Was actually a game that came out a long time ago on the PlayStation 3. It's a game that actually holds up pretty well if you look at footage of the original game in terms of a PS3 game that we might see now, but it definitely benefits from some visual upgrades. Now, this is a game that can cause some divisive opinions. It's definitely got a unique pace to it, and some of the modes that were maybe a little more innovative back in 2013 are a little bit less so now. That being said, it's more than a solid fighting game and a very good celebration of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure anime. It's available on PlayStation 4 and 5. And number 15 is Marvel's Midnight Suns, which, wow, was a lot different than we thought it was going to be. I was looking at this game and the developer and the genre and thinking, wow, so this is going to be X-Men XCOM. It is not that. It's not super far of a departure from that, but there is so much more going on here, and the combat is definitely not the same thing as XCOM. The story mode actually has some Persona type influence on it, which is really bizarre, but it all comes together pretty well between the card-based combat system and the pretty extensive ability to roleplay in your day-to-day. It's a different one, and it's refreshing on top of just a good way to pass some time. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's out on both PS4 and PS5. And number 14 is Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, a game that I think some people might be expecting to be more elaborate than it is. It is, in terms of gameplay, very, very similar to the original PSP game, but has some refinements that make it a lot more enjoyable to play. And I'm not talking about the graphics, which are significantly better than they were on, a 15-year-old portable game. It is not mind-blowing in terms of graphics. It doesn't quite compare to the Final Fantasy VII remake. It clearly takes the same approach, but understands that it is ultimately a handheld game with a new coat of paint. And because it embraces that, in my opinion, it works very well. Also, despite having a pretty large amount of content, it's not a full pricer. It's a $49.99 price point for this one, and I think that that's more than fair. You can get that for both PS4 and PS5, and I would recommend it if you're a Final Fantasy VII fan. And number 13 is GhostWire Tokyo, a different game. It was one that had kind of a weird development cycle where we weren't completely sure what was going on all the time, and it came out, and it's basically a detective story with some good action stuff. This is a game where you're just trying to figure out what the hell's going on, more or less. Everybody's pretty much ghost snapped, for lack of a better word, and you're dealing with this really weird, empty Tokyo that's occupied by spirits you gotta fight. I enjoyed this one quite a bit, although if I have a criticism, it's that the gameplay loop can get a little repetitive. That being said, it is a very unique looking game with a different story and feels like a different experience. It's also only for PS5 and is a very pretty game. At number 12 is Evil West, a gamer's game. All of us who used to play really video games back in the PS3, Xbox 360 era feel completely at home in Evil West. This is one of those games where I just immediately felt at home. I enjoyed the hell out of this. It is weird but familiar. It looks great, certainly better than most of the games that inspired it from back in the day, and just a hell of a lot of fun. Flying Wild Hog, the developers of Shadow Warrior, really just hit a great balance of kind of Devil May Cry with the new form of God of War. It's somewhere between those games, and it just works so good in my opinion. You can play Evil West on PS4 and 5. At number 11 is Sonic Frontiers. You'll recall that before you buy, we were a little critical, but it was out of love. This is one of those games where it had a lot riding on it and could have been a huge disaster, but in fact, it's probably the best 3D Sonic game, period. They really nailed a good gameplay loop for a 3D Sonic. They give you a very different story that's sort of subdued and interesting, and even if a little predictable, feels like it's got some weight to it, and the characterization of everybody is actually good. Like, you feel like you get to know all of these characters a lot more over the course of this game. And really, you spend most of your time with Sonic and alone, which is counterintuitive, but really, if you think that Sonic is worth playing, and that may take a very specific kind of person, Sonic Frontiers, the new Sonic game, it's where it's at. It's really, really good. You can find Sonic Frontiers on both PlayStation 4 and 5. At number 10 is A Plague Tale Requiem, a very worthy sequel that takes the concepts of the first game, Plague Tale Innocence, and makes them a lot bigger. The storytelling is better, the characterization is better, and wow, are there more rats. This game takes place 6 months after the first game, and is really just a sort of straightforward continuation of the story. Beatrice and Lucas are heading to Providence. Now, this is one of those games that is going to go ahead and beat you in the gut repeatedly. I will give you a warning, but it is also beautiful on the PlayStation 5. You should definitely play it if you haven't and like narrative games. At number 9 is Rollerdrome, and this is a game that I have wasted a stupid amount of time on. It's basically, I've seen so many people describe it as Tony Hawk with guns, and that's exactly what it is. And it works so well. It's a single-player game, it's not multiplayer, which you might expect it would be, but no. And I think that it benefits from being kind of the same kind of experience as Ali Ali, the other game that Roll7 is known very well for. Just between the kind of Tony Hawk like skating, the grinding, and the bullet time shooting, this is just a joy to play. If you have not played Rollerdrome, you owe it to yourself. It's out on both PS4 and 5. At number 8 is Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. Now, if you remember before you buy about this, I didn't love this game. And if I'm completely honest, there is still a lot about it that I don't like. But the stuff that I do like, after you let a little time pass and come back to it, it is actually pretty darn good. The combat, and particularly the integration of the sort of Neo and Final Fantasy traditional job system, are really the highlight. The acting is not. It's kind of so earnest and weird that it can be funny at times, but it also does wear out its welcome after a while. That said, a lot of people really like this game. It's gotten a lot of steam after its release, and I think there is good reason to play it. You can find it on both PS4 and 5. And number 7 is Sifu, just a beautiful, wonderful roguelike martial arts beat 'em up where when you die, you become older and better in terms of martial arts, but worse in terms of taking a beating. The thing about it is you're probably going to die too. It's one of those games that has a few parts in it that are just over the top, and that is not a criticism. This is a game that pulls no punches and is just a balls to the wall experience the whole way through. I really enjoy Sifu. It's on PS4 and 5. And number 6 is Gran Turismo 7. It's Gran Turismo 7. It is the 7th Gran Turismo, and wow, is it Gran Turismo. And it might sound like I'm being sarcastic or critical, but I am not. That is exactly what you want out of Gran Turismo. And wow, is it ever beautiful. This is one of those games that gives you a lot of choices in terms of how you go about winning and doesn't make it particularly easy on you. Yeah, you're going to probably be able to finish third without a lot of trouble, but you're going to have to get good at this game to finish first. Now, this game was the subject of some controversy regarding microtransactions. I would say, it's been pretty resolved at this point. Gran Turismo 7 is great. Really a fantastic entry into the series and is available on PS4 and 5. And number 5 is Dying Light 2 Stay Human, a game that had a troubled development cycle, but landed and really is a good game. It is an open-world survival zombie game with a lot of parkour, and it really delivers a massive upgrade over the originals. Combat is great. A lot of the changes to the daily loop, I think, were quite welcome in terms of how aggressive the zombies are during the day. I mean, there is a lot of really good stuff in this game, and it's easy to spend a lot of time in. Dying Light 2 Stay Human is available on PS4 and 5. And number 4 is The Last of Us Part 1, which was a really intense revamp of the first of The Last of Us games. A lot of people said, is this necessary? We have seen several remasters of this, it feels like. And I would say yes, this one actually was the real remaster / remake as far as I'm concerned. It looks a lot better. It incorporates a lot of stuff from The Last of Us Part 2. And let's just be clear, like, everybody looks a hell of a lot better in this game and feels more realistic in terms of their acting. It is an impressive and enjoyable remake / remaster, and definitely worth it, especially if you haven't bought it more than once already. And number 3 is Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel to the first Horizon Zero Dawn, and really an upgrade in every way. It's a lot bigger, a lot prettier, and if you enjoyed the first game, it's just a bigger, better version of the first game. It clears out some of the tedious stuff and gives you way more to explore. Did I mention it's beautiful? It's absolutely stunning, and it is available on both PlayStation 4 and 5. And number 2 is Elden Ring. You knew it was going to be on here. Elden Ring is the open world attempt at a Dark Souls game, and it succeeded, to say the very least. I mean, this is a huge, sprawling narrative contained in the typical Dark Souls way, littered throughout this incredible, huge world with, of course, From Software's refined combat. It's just a joy to play Elden Ring. It's, of course, available on both PS4 and 5. And finally, at number 1, and this is not going to be a surprise to anybody, it's God of War Ragnarok. The most spectacular first-party game Sony has up its sleeve got a sequel, and it's every bit as good, if not better, than the first. God of War and God of War Ragnarok just have a fantastic, balanced battle system, a great narrative, great characters, and look absolutely gorgeous. On both PS4 and 5. There is not a lot else to say other than you have to play this if you haven't already. It's important. It's available on both PlayStation 4 and 5. You have no excuses. Couple of quick bonuses for you. First, Uncharted: The Legacy of Thieves collection. This gives you Uncharted 4 and Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, both fantastic entries into the series, and to be frank, still both visually impressive. Of course, these are available on the PS5. Moving on to Inscription, a deck building game that blends escape room puzzles, psychological horror into a very weird roguelike, available on PlayStation 4 and 5. The Callisto Protocol, which is not without its problems. Probably the best way to play it right now is the PS5. The PC version was in shambles. It's still, I think, being worked on. It's available on PS4 and 5. It is a good experience on both. Again, it has some problems, but it's actually shockingly not just another Dead Space game. It has some interesting mechanics to it that are different, and it is worth actually going through for a lot of the interesting stuff that happens in it. Next is Persona 5 Royale, which, hell yeah, of course, absolutely. It's Persona, like Persona 5 specifically. To have that on PS4 and 5 now? Of course. Of course! Moving on, it's the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, the expanded version of 2013's frankly very strange narrative-driven first-person choice simulator, more or less. This is a weird game and also very fun, and it's now available on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Destiny 2: The Witch Queen, a major expansion for Destiny 2, which is of course Bungie's premier first-person ongoing experience. And finally, Need for Speed Unbound, which is a visual departure as well as just a very enjoyable entry into the Need for Speed series, which maybe doesn't reinvent the wheel, but gives us a lot of interesting stuff and will waste a lot of your time. And that's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero, and we'll see you next time right here on GameRanx.